In 2024, the main reason people use AI was to generate ideas for therapeutic support and to search specific things. But in 2025, this changed drastically. And I want to ask you, do you know what it is? Well, let me answer it for you. In 2025, the main reasons were therapeutic support, for organizing life, and for finding purpose. So deep fundamental questions, and what this shows is that we rely more and more on ChatGPT and other such models to basically design our life. Now this information is great if you think about the update that was launched in April for ChatGPT, where for 3 weeks ChatGPT agreed with you to such an extent that questions such as, do I have a chance to date Dua Lipa? Or, hey, I'm a prophet and some random guy told me this and I really believe this. And another guy is saying, you know what, I'm schizophrenic and I have these medications but don't think that I should take them anymore. And what ChatGPT said, yes, just do your thing, you're absolutely right. Don't believe me? Sure, you can look at this and this and this. Another thing that I did was I told ChatGPT outright, I said, hey, you're being way too nice, there are all these reports and I want to create a video to talk about this concept where you're being way too agreeable and there's no pushback on ideas. And can you give me examples? ChatGPT said, yeah, sure, we can do this. Let me just roll out this example, this scenario, and you can ask me and I'll just give you the answer which confirms to you. And this is a really good idea. So this video is also approved by ChatGPT. Let's go. But all jokes aside, how does AI even get to this point? Is this agreeing an exception or is it the rule? To answer this, I first want to give a short, broad, but insightful overview on how AI functions, how it's trained, so that we know what we're dealing with. Afterwards, I wouldn't do my psychology degrees honors if I wouldn't talk about the detrimental, the bad psychological effects it has on humans. And lastly, I want to talk about some real life implications and also some takeaways that I find really important in this whole discussion. So first, how's AI trained? So AI functions as basically a data analysis model. And what it first does is it's being trained in pre-training, it's exposed to a lot of data, a lot of text, and then it analyzes statistical correlations between certain words. So for example, the word cookies is more linked, and you can find it more often with the word milk than the word steak. So it then gets a certain idea that, okay, cookies and milk kinda go together. It doesn't quite understand it yet, but there are these certain broad categories it creates. Now the second step is supervised training, where humans basically adjust this model and categorize things in the correct categories. And an example would be in image recognition, where there are mostly brown dog pictures that was shown to the AI model. And then if we would show a brown cat, the AI model would probably say that it's a dog, because in the understanding it had currently, it was the aspect that, okay, brown seems to be dog. But humans can say, no, this is not a dog, this is a cat. And then it has to differentiate further, and the model gets more complex. Now the third step is the one where it gets really interesting, because that's reinforcement learned from human feedback. It's the similar idea of saying, no, this is right, this is wrong, but scaled to a much larger extent. So with ChatGPT, you get this if you use it regularly. So after a while, you don't get just one response, but you get two different ones, and then it says, hey, we want your help to improve this model. Which one of these are more helpful? Humans then say, this answer is more useful, and then the model gets trained, it recognizes, okay, this type of answer in this context is more useful than this other type of context. And now, if you think about it, this is where the root of the problem essentially occurs. Because the way that the models are being trained is that they rely on the agreement, on the feedback of humans. They get molded to an extent where they just adjust themselves to the needs of those humans. Now the engineers behind these models, they can also adjust how much certain feedback is weighted. You could, for example, say that the last person who gave you a response, just take that response fully into account and change yourself completely based on that. This wouldn't be a useful model, but this is something that you could do. And the magic is basically in trying to find the perfect mix, which results in a helpful model. But okay, this is how the AI model functions, but what does this mean for us as humans? Why is it even so dangerous? For starters, there's this thing that we as humans have, some stronger than others, but we all have it to a certain extent. It is confirmation bias. It's that we seek out information that corresponds to things that we already believe. If you have this example of asking a question, getting a yes answer either way, you get this false sense of confidence that you build up, and you get even more confident in the answer that you already have. In a more extreme level, this results in groupthink. So the tendency that we want to confirm to other people, and then you get way worse decision making because it aligns with the agreement of the group. And on top, you then get again this increased sense of false confidence and invulnerability. The third level of this are echo chambers, which are created because people then only exist in a bubble that think alike. And these are these subgroups where this false sense of confidence and these worse decision making is just increased to an even larger extent. Now, if you think about ChatGPT and how it can realize that there's correlations between, okay, people who asked this question are likely to also ask these questions or are interested in these questions, then you tend to guide people into certain directions based on the questions that they asked previously. And this guidance, this path that is being laid out by ChatGPT is also formed by the answers of other people. In a sense, you are being guided by other people, and this danger of echo chambers is very real. Actually, it's more than real. This is a paper which has discussed existence of echo chambers created by LLM models, and this is a danger which is not being talked as much about. And it's one thing to get a certain false confidence about just information, about facts, about okay, which is the most efficient way to edit a video. But if you think about what I said at the start, that in this year people use ChatGPT and these models for things such as finding purpose, organizing a life, and essentially therapy. People are, without their knowledge, shaped and molded into the idea of other people. If you contrast that with what a real therapist would do, there's similarities, definitely, but there are also critical differences. So a therapist would also listen to you and will also assess what you're saying based on a certain system it has. In this case, there's the DSM, there's a manual based on symptoms for different mental disorders. But what it would then do if someone would say certain things, it wouldn't just agree. If it's something that is not correct, it would basically correct the person or would give questions to make the person reflect on what they're saying. In this case, what ChatGPT has done in this update, for example, it wasn't to function as a therapist. It functioned as a good friend. And these things are widely different. AI definitely has the potential to supplement therapy and to contribute to improve mental health in society, but these are things that you should really not neglect. So what are the takeaways? What are the real-life implications of these things? First, cultivating increased awareness of how much you're relying on AI and about which topics this reliance is. I said this primarily because, as seen in the updates of April, these models can change drastically, and in this case, you can be aware of it, but these changes can also be more subtle, and these subtle changes can also be in a direction that you actually don't want to go, but you're being guided to. Once you have an increased awareness, you at least know how much you rely on it, so you can at least allocate a bigger effort to critically think about the responses about certain topics. Because, for example, when I asked ChatGPT about certain editing tricks. It's not that important if it's not the most effective route, because it gets the job done. But if I asked it about more intricate ideas about life, then I am very skeptical about the validity of these answers. The second aspect, which we should keep in mind as a whole society, in my opinion, is that discourse will probably change throughout the next years. So everyone can answer certain questions if they just ask these models. And what people do is they ask the questions and then they get an answer which conforms to them, which reassures them about, hey, what you were thinking is right. Or they basically have the similar effect of a teacher who cannot say flat out no when a student who is not as knowledgeable about the topic asks a question, because he wants to encourage them. And what the teacher then does is he doesn't say, no, you're wrong, but he picks an aspect of this question and then he builds more information around this question to present it in a way where the thing that you were asking or the thing that you said in this regard was actually not that far off. And what this leads to is people will have an increased confidence about topics. And if you extrapolate it to a whole society, how will discussions look in the future where everyone has such an confidence about these ideas that they have, and then they try to clash with each other with these ideas? This is not something which is extremely urgent right now, even though there's more polarization, but I think this is something that we should really keep in mind for society in the next years. The third and also the most practical aspect is train your AI. As we learned, these models rely on them being trained appropriately, and they rely on your feedback. And if you use them after you're being aware on what you're relying it on and which direction you want to go towards, be sure to train it in a way where it does not just give you an answer which assures you, but always include some aspect where give me pushback if my idea is wrong. Give me pushback if there's an even better question to ask, or if there's even a better way to go about it. This is a prompt which I include in almost all my questions nowadays. The addition of, if there's another angle that I missed, let me know. But this is not the normal case for people. And I think this is something that is so crucial to get a bigger and also more accurate idea. These three takeaways are the most important one as of right now, in my opinion. But if you're still wondering about the psychological mechanisms behind this influence this whole thing has, then I actually created a video about the three most important social influence studies in psychology that we as students learn and then kind of forget over time, even though they're really important. If you're also more interested in improving your life in general, I created a video on a habit system which helped me, which might also help you. But for now, I thank you very much for listening and see you soon. Bye bye.